So mainstream media isn't reporting the news story about the Afghanistan war properly, and that's a shame. In fact, they're really, really way off. So let's take a look at this clip from Fox News, then we'll come back and I'll break it down further.
All right, Fox News alert: the U.S. reaches a deal in principle to withdraw troops from Afghanistan. The tentative agreement made with the Taliban coming as the militant group defends a suicide bombing in the capital city of Kabul, where 16 civilians were killed and dozens wounded yesterday. Lucas Tomlinson is live at the Pentagon for us now. Lucas?
Sandra, the tentative agreement, it calls for more than 5,000 troops to be pulled out from 5 bases across Afghanistan. There are 14,000 U.S. troops currently deployed there. The news comes from President Trump's special envoy to the U.S.-led peace talks with the Taliban.
We have reached an agreement with the Taliban in principle, but of course, until the U.S. president agrees with it, it isn't final.
Last night, a massive truck bombing rocked Kabul as Zalmay Khalilzad's interview aired last night on local news. The explosion hit an area where dozens of international groups are housed. At least 16 civilians were killed, more than 100 wounded. The Taliban claimed responsibility for the attack. Khalilzad also said the draft agreement identifies the Taliban as the Islamic Emirate. Afghanistan's ambassador to the U.S. questioned the Taliban's commitment to peace as fighting continued and another U.S. Special Forces soldier was killed.
I am wondering if on one hand you are negotiating peace and on the other hand you continue to kill the party that is sitting across from you on the table. How does that work?
Over the weekend, the Pentagon identified the U.S. Army Green Beret killed in combat late last week in southern Afghanistan. 31-year-old Sergeant First Class Dustin Ard of Idaho Falls, Idaho, was killed Thursday in southern Afghanistan's Zabul province on the border with Pakistan. 15 U.S. troops have been killed in combat this year, the most in the past 5 years, but far fewer than the roughly 500 killed in 2010 when over 100,000 U.S. troops were deployed to Afghanistan. Sandra.
And Lucas Tomlinson at the Pentagon. Lucas, thank you.
So the way that this is being portrayed in print media and in mainstream media on TV is that it's a withdrawal. And I've seen think pieces saying like, oh, the Taliban is going to capitalize on this withdrawal of troops. And I just think that's massively misleading because they actually stated the number there. There's 14,000 troops there and 5,000 are going to be leaving. That leaves 9,000 there? That's not a withdrawal. Let's stop being ridiculous. In fact, we've seen this before. Obama at times had yo-yoed the troop levels. Bush at times had yo-yoed the troop levels, where, you know, you have up to 100,000 at times, and then you draw it down to 10,000. And I think there have been times where it's been like 4,000 or 8,000. Trump is going to leave 9,000 troops there? Let me explain to you what this is. This is Donald Trump. His instincts are like, well, we should get out. Stupid. But he surrounds himself with neocon advisors, and then they're like, no, yeah, sure, we're going to get out. Anyway, so here's our plan that leaves 9,000 troops there. And he's like, okay, tremendous. That's not a withdrawal. We've been there 18 years. If you want to stay there, you better come to me with the very specific plan detailing why we're there, why we're still there, why we need to continue to be there. Here's what our goals are and how we're going to meet them in the future. If you don't have that, I'm not even entertaining this conversation. Because as a result of us being there, the situation is tangibly worse. I'm not just saying that. There are more. The Taliban controls more territory today than they did before we invaded. Stop and think about that. So that is like the definition of failure. And if you want to say, hey, let's just call it a success and get out, you could also do that because the stated goal was we got to get Osama bin Laden. And guess what? He did. Been dead for a long time. And it wasn't even in Afghanistan. It was in Pakistan that we got him. So you could say Osama bin Laden's dead. You could say Al-Qaeda is in tatters. There's barely in Afghanistan anymore. That's true. But the Taliban is there, and they control over 50% of the country, which you're going to have to deal with because they're a guerrilla army. So, you know, you could help out the Afghanistan government and give them the ability to control their own territory, give them, the funds, the arming. But for us to just stay there and 15 service members just recently died, what are you going to say to their family members? It's hey, don't worry, they died fighting for freedom? We know Afghanistan is not going to be some sort of Jeffersonian democracy. Don't be ridiculous. So what'd they die for? For us to try to get our hands on mineral wealth? The trillions of dollars worth of mineral wealth that Afghanistan has? Maybe. Did they die for the profits of the military-industrial complex? Maybe. But they died. It was an endless war. They died in an endless war. 18 years, man. 18 years. There are young adults walking around today who have never experienced a single moment in their lives that the war in Afghanistan wasn't going on. That's madness, and that's lunacy. We have to stop it, and we have to stop it now. Just drawing down to 9,000 is not nearly enough, and the media in their normal, terrible fashion, instead of saying, this isn't a withdrawal, you're keeping 9,000 troops there. Why? What's the reason? What are your defined goals? When will you declare victory and come home? How much longer do you want? Instead of doing that, they do the opposite. President Trump withdrawing and giving the Taliban the ability to take over more of the country and fill the power vacuum. This is a bad idea. So what's your plan? Stay there with 15,000? Stay there, knock it up to 30? What's your plan? And how would you justify it to the families of the people who are being sent to die in an endless war with no goals?